There is a truth within you. It's always been there. It will always be there. And you know that truth. And it may be hidden even from yourself at times because it's been suppressed to help keep you safe. And this week's astrology is calling you to bring that truth to the surface and let it be seen, let it be heard. So, we are going to explore why that is such a powerful and good thing to be happening, even if it perhaps feels a little scary. So, in my group coaching container this week, Sacred Business Alchemy, we were doing our module on visibility, letting ourselves be more seen in our businesses. And I went in really expecting there to be a lot of resistance. But what I found instead was relief, a big collective sigh. Because when people are given permission to show up their way, something opens. And this week's transits are doing that same thing astrologically that I was facilitating in that room, which is giving you permission to be fully seen in your truth. So, on this week's Planetary Pulse for the week of May 31st, 2026, I am going to walk you through every transit between now and the end of the week, show you how this full moon in Sagittarius with Mercury and Chiron energy and Uranian energy is supporting your healing journey. I'm going to break down each transit through the week, even the moon phases, and we'll close with an integration practice to carry it all forward. So let's get into it. So we're starting out May 31st with that full moon in Sagittarius. And I want to speak to why this is not an ordinary full moon in Sagittarius. So, first of all, full moons happen when the sun and moon are on opposite sides. So there's this natural polarization and that carries a tension, right? But it also carries this mirror because each sign carries a counterpart and they're not separate. They're one and the same. They're just two sides of the same coin. So the sun right now is in Gemini is illuminating the moon in Sagittarius. And this creates an opportunity for full expression, just being completely seen in your brightness. And what's been building since the Gemini new moon now comes to fruition in the sign of Sagittarius. So there can be, everything that's been kind of brewing, all of our emotions, all of our energy that's been building, it reaches this culmination point. And that's why full moons can feel a little intense because maybe all of our emotions are suddenly in our faces. So let's talk about Sagittarius and Gemini together. Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign ruled by Jupiter. And this is about having faith that there is meaning to our lives, even if it's a meaning of our own choosing. And there's this wisdom that there is some intelligence guiding us larger than our individual selves. And Gemini is a mutable air sign, and Gemini is the one that asks the questions, gathers the data. So then that's where Sagittarius can synthesize it all into this larger truth or belief system or philosophy. So here at this full moon in Sagittarius, perhaps you've been exploring your curiosity, learning new things, and something to ask under this full moon is what's the answer that you have arrived at? What truth is emerging from all of these questions you've been asking of yourself, of others? So meanwhile, Uranus is currently at 1 degree of Gemini, and it's moving towards a square to the nodes of the moon. This square to both Uranus and the moon and the sun, this is our midway point between eclipse seasons. So there's this disruptive energy mixing in the mix here. And there's a real possibility for breakthroughs, especially with something that's kind of this larger karmic unfolding through the eclipses. So there might be something unexpected surfacing around this time, a realization, a rupture, perhaps, a sudden clarity. And it's not random. It's part of this larger, longer arc. And this is really a breakthrough moment, even if perhaps the chaos feels like a breakdown point. So, Uranus squaring the nodes, part of this full moon mix, the path that your soul is on is being disrupted with purpose, with meaning. And it's to get you more aligned with that truth. And, unexpected things might be doing its work, shaking loose what is not true for you anymore. Maybe it used to be and it's not anymore. And so, before we even start to think about bringing our truth to our audience, to our clients, it's important to touch in with yourself and be really honest with yourself first. I'm a Cancer rising, and this has been a huge learning for me, especially these past few years. I've had this default of empathy, which is, a wonderful Cancerian quality, but it can muddy the waters when it comes to figuring out what's mine, what's yours. And so I kind of just like sponged up everybody else's truths and couldn't see my own clearly. And so that's been a true anchoring for me. And I think that's available for all of us. I know a lot of people who tune into this work here are empathic, are sensitive to the energies of others. And so Uranus might be coming and giving a shock to your system just to clear the air, clear your own energy field so you can come back to a space where you can hear your own truth. And this is where true connection becomes possible. We're tuning into Jupiter currently in Cancer as well, and there's so much healing and truth sharing that can happen in connection, but it needs to include that boundary of what's mine and what's yours. What am I responsible for? What are you responsible for? And I think that's where some of this truth telling can get confusing because, first of all, we're concerned that our truth may harm someone else. And that's something that came it through really strongly in the group this week. And what we found is that it's not the truth that harms people. It's the silence. It's the withholding of truth. And there's absolutely a kind and caring way to share your truth. And it may disrupt someone else's reality and someone else's experience. And that's not your responsibility to hold. As long as you're coming with a true connection to your truth and coming from a place of that care and heart-centeredness and empathy, then you can trust that the truth is going to ultimately serve everyone involved. So that's been a huge theme, and that was kind of surprising that came up. And like, that's what has been preventing some of my clients from really stepping forward and offering that vulnerability that they know is going to create healing and resonance in their audience, but they've been withholding that truth because of a fear of how it might disrupt some of their relationships. So coming back to what's true for you and how can this truth serve others? And how can we deliver the truth in a way that is both kind and also not withholding? So on the same day, May 31st, Mercury is making its final transit in Gemini, and it is sextiling Chiron in Aries. And this brings some of that woundedness, some of our own healing around our connection to our truth, brings that to a place where we can really be supported in when we share our message, when we share our wound. That is something that supports everyone's healing journey. So, Mercury is finishing up in Gemini, and it is so strong there. It's all about curiosity and questions and the willingness to look at things in different ways and new angles. And Chiron is an asteroid that symbolizes the wounded healer, the place where your deepest hurt then becomes your medicine and your teaching that you share with others. And a sextile is a stimulating aspect. So there's this connection between those two energies that helps you find the words to express the wound in a way that can really spark something in someone else. Okay, so with this, full moon, you can ask yourself, where have you been feeling like you've been taking on responsibility for other people's emotions, experiences, and what would it free up if you were to let that go? So let's keep moving through the week now that we've really deep dived into that full moon. So on June 1st, Mercury moves into Cancer. So this is a big vibe shift in the way we are communicating. Things maybe start to slow down a bit from that really quick witted Mercury who is trying to just take in all the information all at once. And now we're moving into a space of communication that's really caring and intuitive in the sign of Cancer. And so it's really about the heart resonance, the energetic space you create, and communicating within that. And as Mercury moves into Cancer, it's going to be joining Jupiter and Venus are there as well. And so our words really become this beautiful vehicle for connection and care and wisdom. Mercury will be turning retrograde later in the month in the sign of Cancer. So we're going to get an extended stay of Mercury in Cancer. So get used to this way of communicating. We're going to, of course, deep dive on Mercury in retrograde as we get closer to that. And for now, just pay attention to that. The energetics, the emotions, what's happening beneath the words, not just what is said, but how it's felt, how it lands. So, really practice communicating from genuine care. People feel the difference when you are coming from a place that's transactional or really strategic to a place of, I just want to know how you're feeling and how I can help. Like that's huge in this world today and really valuable. And that's going to support your business relationships, your sales, your marketing, all of that, particularly while Mercury is moving through Cancer. Okay, same day, the moon moves into Capricorn. So now we're getting into our waning gibbous phase throughout the week. So we're integrating all of the wisdom of the full moon. I always recommend giving some extra self care post full moon. Again, like we talked about, high energy, high emotions. And so the moon now in Capricorn, we can take some of those emotions and channel them into practical structure. So giving yourself a plan for your day, a rhythm, and tuning into what you're devoted to and how that can be really emotionally satisfying. So you might want to create or recommit to a container that supports your work, that supports your care for yourself and others, whether that's a work rhythm or a boundary you want to set, or just a structure that protects your energy. Okay, June 2nd, the sun in Gemini sextiles Saturn in Aries. So again, that sextile, it's stimulating, it's supportive, it creates a good communication between the planetary energies. So, what I'm feeling into here is that your learning, your creativity, your connection is going to be supported again by that structure. So, bringing some focus and purpose to the ways you want to create and produce, and, moving away from that hustle feeling in what you're learning, what you're creating, and really giving it a container. So, if there's something that maybe you've been putting off, or you've just been, in that Gemini phase of gathering up so much information and conversation and maybe feeling like some balls have dropped, this can be a time where you give yourself a deadline. Can actually be a really powerful support under a transit like this. Even if it's just for yourself, like I'm going to organize all of my thoughts. I'm giving myself 20 minutes, and that can actually be really liberating and supportive and can help keep you from getting in the overwhelm of information overload in Gemini season. Okay, so June 3rd, Mercury is getting really active. So first it trines the nodes, and this is bringing our words, remember those Cancerian ways of communication, in alignment with our kind of soul evolution and direction. So the vibe here is really noticing that what you say and what you hear is moving you towards where you are meant to go. And of course, Uranus is still building up to that square to the nodes as well. And so this trine creates a moment of clarity of that cuts through some of that really chaotic energy. It's like a signal in the noise. So take some time to write, record, speak, and just let your truth come through and let it be shared, let it be received. So, same day, Mercury is also getting a square from Neptune. And this can be a bit confusing mentally. And, there can be some mental fog, but it can also be deeply intuitive and imaginative. So, what I invite you on to kind of practice on this day is not trying to force the words or the thoughts to come. Like, don't just stare at a blank page and just try and force something to come through. Rather, drop a question in that you're trying to work through and do the dishes and forget about it for a little while or go for a walk and notice when something pops through. You want to get your ideas through the side door rather trying to force through. Okay, so those were like all of the major aspects. Now we're just going to go through our kind of moon transitions for the rest of the week. On June 4th, the moon moves into Aquarius and our emotions kind of lift into this broader, maybe cerebral kind of place. So it's about big picture thinking, it's about connecting to community, it's about feeling into your vision for the future. And so something you can do around this time is zoom out and really consider what's the ecosystem you're building in your business. How do all of your connections kind of weave together to create this larger long-term vision you're creating? So really give yourself some space to see that fully. And then on June 6th, the moon moves into Pisces. So we're closing the week with a more dreamy energy. And this is about surrendering. We're going to be on the next day moving into our last quarter moon in Pisces. So we'll get more into that moon phase then, but start to give yourself some more permission to rest, to receive, to let things unfold. So, the themes coming through this week are around truth, around intuition, and trust. So, that's what I invite you to explore. This full moon is really illuminating that truth within you, and it's giving you an opportunity to shake loose and release what has prevented you from letting yourself be seen in your truth. There's a lot of intuition that's being cultivated with the Mercury square Neptune and moon coming into Pisces, and that trust piece with Jupiter in Cancer and that Sagittarius energy. It's like you're being asked to tune into the meaning of your work, your mission, and have faith that you are on the right track. So, underneath all of that, Uranus and the midpoint of the eclipses is reminding us that this, what might feel a bit disruptive or chaotic, is actually bringing us back into the direction that is best for us, for our audience, for our clients. So, bring some trust to that surprise, that unexpected thing might actually be the thing that's recalibrating you. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in this week. If this resonates with you, if you are someone who wants to practice working with these larger cycles in your business and to support a business that is aligned with who you truly are, your truth, I would love to invite you to the Boss Witch Collective on School. So, inside the collective, you will get immediate access to my Moon Magic to Grow Your Business mini training, which is exactly what it sounds like, a deep dive into working with the lunar energy in your business and your life. It lives inside the community. So when you join, you get both the training and the people to do this work alongside you. So the link is in the description below. Come find your people, come join us. And before you go, drop what's coming up for you this full moon. Maybe give us a taste of that truth that wants to come through. We would love to hear from you. All right, until next time, take good care.